So let's make some bread from start to finish. So this wheat was planted earlier in the year and it's now ready to harvest. And the great thing about wheat is that when you grow it on a small scale, you can literally just snap it off by hand and put it in a bucket. And then you can thresh the grains out of the seed heads. Basically, if you hit these hard enough with something, the little wheat grains, they pop out and they're ready to be winnowed. One way to do this on a small scale is to stuff an old pillowcase with these and beat them with a rolling pin, but I've got a slightly more mechanised version. I've got an old strimmer head here attached to my drill, and I can put that into a bucket like this. Leave something like this, a load of empty stalks, and down at the bottom of the bucket we've got all the grain, but it's all mixed in with this chaff here. So what I first do is I get rid of the stalks. I usually use a garden riddle for this, and that just makes winnowing it out a bit easier. So I'm left with this. This contains the wheat grains, but there's a lot of husk in here, which is also known as the chaff. So it's a fairly easy way of separating this out. So for the next step, we really need a strong breeze, and of course every time I want to do this, there's never any wind, so I'm going to create my own wind with my portable power bank and a sort of a desktop fan. So the idea is, as I blow this, or as I pour this through the wind stream, all the heavy grain falls down to the bottom, and all that stuff blowing away is the chaff. So the grain is going into the bucket, and the chaff is blowing away. If I do this a few times, it should clean up that grain quite nicely. And that's after the second winnow, getting there. And depending how good the threshing has been, you might be left with a few husks still. You can just put these through the flour mill and they'll just be extra fibre. There's a kind of a point of diminishing returns about how many times you thresh it or winnow it. And then just put a couple of cups of this through my hand flour mill. And grind some of that up. And that's made some nice wholemeal flour. And the flour can be further refined by passing it through a thin, fine sieve, and that tends to like sort of sieve out some of the bran and the germ, and you get left with not exactly white flour, but it's much finer. But all this stuff here is full of minerals and vitamins and things, all good for you. So I usually just add them in. Gives you a slightly denser loaf, but well, it's good for you, isn't it? Into a bowl, some salt, some yeast, into some water, little touch of oil, and the yeasty water. Lots of kneading. Back in the bowl, cover it over, leave it somewhere warm for an hour, and just knock that out and reshape it. Put it in a bread tin, a little bit of flour on top, and set it in to proof for 1 more hour. Into the oven. And that's it. Nice rustic, homemade, homegrown loaf. Right, let's see what it's like. Looks pretty nice.